And so when did you dive into NLP? What? Because I mean, this is your craft now, and I honestly believe, and I've said it to many people, that I believe you're the best, definitely within this country,
Wow,
at NLP as NLP is, but then also your own self mastery. The way you do it
yeah, it's a
is different.
mix, hugely.
It's I believe the best. And so when did you start learning, like formally learning hypnosis, neurolinguistic programming?
Yes.
That's crazy stuff.
Yeah, it is, and this is super crazy, right? So if we do it this way, right, we'll make like a bit of a timeline. Well, I started reading Tony Robbins. Then I got like addicted. Obviously, when you first get the bug from Tony Robbins, you go fucking crazy, right? So I was Tony Robbins this, he's the only person on the planet that could do this, blah, 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 blah. He's the only person that I would listen to. But then it gets to a point where you sort of learn and model and, like extract as much as you can out of it. It's like, all right, cool. I sort of want to diverse a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started, looking at many other people, whoever they were, whether they were well known or the person down the road that's doing good shit, started modeling them and what they were doing. So over the years, I got into, I started changing my own life. I started changing my own health and fitness because I was a fucking fat wreck back then. My body was just buggered from all the booze and all the rest of the abuse. So I started sorting myself out, and I did like my personal training course, and I became a PT for, I think I was a PT for about 4 years. So I was using all those skills within my PT business,
Mm-hmm.
and it got to the point where people were getting better results from me just having a chat with them than actually doing the personal training.
My God.
Yeah, and this is very common for people.
Yeah.
You would have done the same thing, right?
Well, that's why I started, because I was training athletes, and I realized that it wasn't the physical training; it was the
They don't have to be
mindset.
there.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it was their heads.
Yeah. So the funny thing was, when I first went into the PT thing, there was 45 other personal trainers there, and no one talked to me except the other dude that I joined there with the day, H-Man, still good friends of mine. No one talked to us for the first 3 weeks because the turnover rate was crazy. No one so-called made it, and everyone would fucking laugh at us, right? And I was like, that's horse shit. That's not nice. And right at the very end, I watched probably 90% of those people either go on to better things or they couldn't sustain. And I never said this, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, this is fucking awkward, isn't it? Because I was doing quite well, and they so-called, they didn't. But the reason why that was is because I was doing my thing with my clients. The other PTs saw what was going on, they started sending me their clients. And then H-Man, the dude that I went there with, he's like, why are you doing what you're doing? I was like, what do you mean? I was totally unconscious to it. I said, what do you mean? He's like, you talk to people and they change. How the fuck do you do that? What are you doing? I was like, I don't know. I'm just talking to them. Nothing out of the ordinary. He's like, no, dude, there's something very different about you than everyone else in here. And that's when it started to really click consciously. And I was like, what? Do you reckon I should go and do this? And he's like, yeah. The very next day, I read a book, Who Moved My Cheese. The very next day after that, I quit my job of being a PT. And that was the beginning of, I'm going to dedicate my time, my effort, my resources into learning this stuff. And then once again, when the student's ready, the teacher will wake up. I started getting all these NLP courses, hypnosis, try this book, do this, do that. And then I was like, man, I've got to go and get certified in this stuff so I can fucking do it properly, so to speak. Went down and did my course in Sydney. And man, from that, I've just been fucking slaying people in a nice way.
Yeah,
In a nice way.
yeah. So I mean, now you're training other trainers to be able to slay people.
Yes, hugely, and that was never on the cards.
Yeah.
I think you had a fucking lot to do with this.
Probably.
You bastard. This is where it all started. But that was never the intent. The intent was to do it for myself and do it for my family and just, to make life better. But then I was like watching everyone else go through these courses and they weren't doing anything. That frustrated me quite a bit. And the reason why they weren't doing anything from my perception was, number one, they didn't know what the fuck they were doing. They had no idea because everything was so complex. And in my mind, it was like, do this, don't do that. What don't you get? And then they're like, oh my God, I get it. And once again, I was like, the people not fucking know this. And that's where, you and I obviously had many conversations. You're like, dude, you got to go and do this. And I was like, man, it's 18 days away from my family. And we were having a baby.
Shit ton of money.
Second baby, yeah, shit ton of money, time, all this sort of stuff. And I was like, oh, fuck. And then I remember we had a conversation. I rang you up when I was driving home from work. And it was something along the lines of, you're either going to fucking do it or you're not. I was like, done. Next week
I remember, and you were
next
like,
week I was there.
I think you were like, that was quite brutal.
Yeah, I was like, that was brutal, but quite easy.
Yeah.
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 And then and then I went down and got certified in training other people. And the big thing that drives me now is, number one, I want people, when they invest in something, to get what they need to a high degree to be able to go out and do something with it. Because I've done things in the past where you invest and you're like, what the fuck was that? What do I do? And they're like, oh no, that was it. So that was pretty piss weak, dude. No offense. But that's a good thing. That's a good thing for me. It's a good thing for us because I learned from that. It's like, right, well, don't do that. Do something better. So, it's all sort of just, I would say, like naturally, organically growing into this sort of beast of its own. And every now and then, I've got to ask that question: what do I do now? Where do I take this now? How do I do this now? And then I listen to that voice because it's never let me down, ever.